Yo, it's NoobiePhD here. I am a noob at Lost Ark, but from a noob's point of view, I can fill in a lot of information that veterans forget to explain because to them it's very basic. The goal of this Mokoko 100 course is to describe what combat is like in Lost Ark so that you can better pick a class from a PvE perspective. I will only focus on DPS classes that will be on launch. The summary is at the end. What is the view like? Lost Ark uses a top-down isometric view that will be more familiar to Diablo and Path of Exile players. The game supports 21:9 resolution, but 16:9 is just fine. The widescreen, though, will help you see more information, which is advantageous during boss fights and PvP. You can also force 21:9 on a 16:9, you'll just have black bars on the top and bottom of the screen. What is movement like? The game uses a click-to-move system for PC. You can choose whether you want to move with left click of the mouse and auto-attack with the right click, or move with the right click and auto-attack with the left click. This is changeable through the menu. And skills are activated by keyboard. Lost Ark does have controller support, and I hear it's actually pretty good, but I have no experience with it personally, so I have linked a YouTube video in the description as reference. One thing to note is that all characters have a spacebar dash that may differ in animation, duration, length, cooldown, and even direction. For example, Gunlancer has a backward dash, and Scrapper has a double dash. All characters also have a roll they can use with spacebar to get up quickly from a knockdown state. It has a long cooldown, so use it wisely. How does attacking feel like? Some skills have long animations, some skills are instant, some are chained where you push the same skill multiple times, some require you to hold down the button, hold skills, casting skills, charging skills. Some skills require you to hold down the button and time a perfect release at a specific window. There's a variety of things. Additionally, there are tripods that you unlock while leveling, and these tripods change the way a skill works. For example, a charge skill can change to become an instant cast. And there's a whole bunch of ways to set these tripods. Some focus on damage, some focus on utility, and more. Animation canceling does exist in this game in the form of skill buffering, where you can chain different attacks together, but you can also interrupt long animations using your spacebar dash. I've linked another video below in the description that talks about skill buffering. All classes also have their unique awakening skill, which is basically their ultimate skill. They typically hit hard and have a base cooldown of about 5 minutes. It is unlocked fairly quickly after reaching level 50 through a quest, and there's even a second awakening skill that can be obtained, but that's through a different and longer quest. I linked a video in the description below that showcases the different awakening skills for each class. What does hitting enemies feel like? There's a difference between trash mobs and different monster grades. Trash mobs are very easy to kill because they are pushed on hit by all attacks, and push interrupts enemy attacks and movement. Higher grade monsters are immune to push, but still vulnerable to certain CC abilities. Then there are boss grade monsters that are immune to both push and CC, but can get staggered after enough stagger damage where they fall to the floor and you can freely DPS. We'll talk about stagger later though. In PvP, players actually have the same push vulnerability as trash mobs, but the difference is some of your skills provide super armors for the duration of the skill that make you immune to push or other CCs. Similarly, in PvE, these skills with super armor will protect you from boss attacks that push or CC. I will put another video linked below in the description that talk about super armors. What does getting hit feel like? Aside from the push and CC mechanics mentioned earlier, different classes have different defense stats that impact how much damage they take from enemies. Take a look at this image. Stamina refers to base HP, and defense refers to how much damage is mitigated or amplified for different characters. But there's a caveat because engravings changes this list for Bard, Paladin, and Artillerist, and engravings will make them tankier than listed here on this chart. My next video will talk about engravings and their impact on combat. What does healing feel like? There are two kinds of potions for self-healing, and it is essential that you know the difference. There is healing over time, which are regular potions, And then there is percent HP healing, which is instant, which are from raid potions. You cannot use the regular potions during raids, and even the percent HP potions for raids are limited in terms of how much you can use in a raid. The raid potions are more costly to obtain than healing over time potions. Healing over time potions only cost silver, but raid potions cost gold to craft or gold to buy on the player market. What are boss fights like in general? As part of your daily routine at max level, you will fight guardians in guardian raids, which is basically Monster Hunter. They are a good archetype for boss fights. These bosses have a set of attacks that are executed in random order, and more importantly, they attack random targets, meaning that this game does not have traditional tank characters. Sometimes there are visual indicators, and sometimes there's only physical indicators, like a tail wiggle. In general, you dodge their attacks and hit from a safe position. More specifically, you hit bosses when they are stuck in longer attack animations. The better you learn a boss and their attack patterns, the more adept you will become at positioning to dodge and attack. This game rewards being close to the boss more than being far away, because many AoE attacks are easier to dodge at close range. The difficulty in combat mostly lies in the fact that self-healing is limited, and many attacks lock you in animation because they're long. There are no skills with iframes or invulnerability frames. The only way to avoid damage is to dodge, or to use skills with shields, which is limited to specific classes, or to use items that provide protection, which is also limited. I personally have a solo Guardian challenge playlist for Scrapper and Deathblade, where I fight bosses with minimal gear and don't use any potions, but I die a lot. You can check that out if you want to see what that's like. What is dying like? Some encounters allow you to resurrect without resetting, whereas some encounters don't. When you're able to resurrect, resurrecting on the spot requires a feather, which is a limited resource. Resurrecting without a feather places you at some checkpoint of the encounter, which can be many screens away from the battle you died in. Feathers are frequently given out freely by daily logins, and can also be obtained through other means. Note that a single person can use up all available resurrections by themselves, which you obviously want to avoid because it can burden your teammates to carry you without having the luxury of resurrecting themselves. For example, in Guardian raids, your party is limited to 3 resurrections total, which is shared among all party members. In weekly Abyss dungeons, you actually don't get any resurrection during the boss fight themselves, but you can wipe and try again with no penalty, besides repair fees for your gear. Every time you die, it lowers the durability of your weapon and armor, but they can be easily repaired using silver at the NPC with the anvil. But if during a fight the durability reaches 0, you will gain no bonus stats from them. What's the typical party composition? Typically 4 players comprise a party. The most common party composition is 3 DPS and 1 support. The supports will shield to mitigate damage taken, heal when your HP is low, and provide damage buffs to the party, increasing your chances of completing the raid by minimizing deaths. However, if you're an amazing player, you will survive without any heals or shields. For example, it's not uncommon to see 4 DPS players clear without a support, though they may have to use raid potions to stay alive instead. What else should I know about combat? When you look at your skills, you will realize that they have modifiers. For example, front or back attack, stagger, part break, and or counter. Skills with the front attack modifier will do 20% more damage and 10% more stagger to the boss when hitting from the front. Skills with the back attack modifier will do 5% more damage and have 10% increased crit chance when hitting from behind. Please correct this list if I'm wrong. I'm a noob, remember, but these are your front attack DPS classes, back attack DPS classes, non-positional DPS classes, in which you can attack from anywhere. For positional classes, you will want to hit from the optimal position, but you don't have to hit from them, especially when you can't. Sometimes bosses hug the walls, so experience will tell you when and where you can hit safely. This information is important for min-maxing because positionality is something that exists in Lost Ark and something that players should be aware of when picking a DPS class. Now regarding the stagger modifier, some skills have stagger that ranges from low, mid, mid-high, high, and highest. Bosses typically display their stagger HP as a purple bar right below their actual health bar. When depleted, they get staggered and just lay on the ground for a few seconds for you to freely DPS. Additionally, there are bosses with a stagger check in the form of a yellow bar just below the bosses themselves. If you fail this mechanic, you can either wipe or take a lot of damage. In Guardian raids, there are sometimes stagger checks, but there is no bar, so you just go ham or cry when your team bails on you. Some classes have more skills with higher stagger modifier than other classes. Now, regarding the part break modifier, Some bosses will reveal weak points when they are staggered, and using sufficient part break skills on these weak points, you can break them, making the boss fight tremendously easier. Some bosses are typically much more difficult to fight if you don't break their weak points. Similar to the Stagger modifier, some classes have more skills with part break than other classes. Every player must become familiar with their class's Stagger and part break skills, but not all classes have reliable Stagger and part break, because these modifiers are on skills that may be used and on cooldown. To supplement classes who have low Stagger and or part break skills, there are craftable battle items like the Whirlwind Grenade for Stagger and Destruction Bombs for part break. Fortunately, battle items are given freely often through daily login rewards and events. The last thing to know about combat is the counter. Every class has at least one skill with the counter modifier, some have two. Most bosses have a type of charge that is counterable, indicated when they turn blue. It's risky because you have to hit them from the front, and if you fail, you will get run over by the charge. But if you succeed, the boss will be mini staggered for free DPS time. Later raids will require you to use counters for mechanics, and so it's important for you to know your class's counter. To summarize, Lost Ark combat uses a top-down isometric view. Mobs are mindlessly easy, whereas bosses require a little more elegance. Each class feels different in combat. They have differences in how they deal optimal DPS, differences in attack animation feeling, differences in defense, differences in utility. I put links in the description below where different YouTubers discuss this in depth. With pros and cons for every class, you just have to play and experience them. By experiencing them firsthand, you may realize that you will like a class that you didn't like at first. And you may also find yourself not liking the class you thought that you would like. With that, we wrap up the course. Study well because this material will be on the exam on February 11th, 2022, when the game launches officially. Unless you bought a Founders Pack and you're taking the Head Start Conflict exam on February 8th. Remember that I've put additional resources in the description to help you. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you again in the next course, Mokoko 101, which will cover engravings. Until then, bye-bye.